My daughter-in-law threw a ceramic mug at my face. The mark stayed for weeks. Hi, my name is Loretta Jean Calloway, and I am 77 years old. I live in a small but cozy little house right on the edge of Clarksville, Tennessee, the kind of neighborhood where everybody knows everybody, where the mailman still waves at you from the street, and the neighbors bring over casseroles when they hear you are not feeling well. I have lived in this house for going on 41 years now, since my late husband, Raymond, and I moved here when our son was just a little boy, running around in diapers and chasing fireflies in the backyard. On summer evenings, this house holds every memory I have of my real life, my good life, the life I built with my own 2 hands and a whole lot of prayer. The floors creak in the same places they always have. The kitchen still smells like cinnamon on Sunday mornings. The back porch still catches the last of the evening light in a way that makes everything look golden, like the world is doing its best to be beautiful just for you. I love this house. I have bled for this house, worked for this house, cried in this house, and laughed in this house more times than I could ever count. And I will tell you right now that no person, no matter who they think they are, was ever going to take this house or the peace inside it away from me. I grew up about 20 miles from here in a little town called Adams, Tennessee. My mama was a seamstress, and my daddy worked at a plant for 30 years. We were not wealthy people, but we were rich in the ways that matter. Mama always had food on the table. Daddy always came home. We went to church every Sunday without fail, rain or shine, sick or well, and those Sunday mornings shaped me into the woman I became. I learned in that little church that your character is what you do when nobody is watching. I learned that a quiet tongue and a steady spirit will outlast a loud mouth every single time. I learned that forgiveness is not something you do for the other person. You do it so the poison does not take up permanent residence in your own chest. I met Raymond Calloway when I was 22 years old at a church picnic. He was 26 and he had the most honest eyes I had ever seen on a man. Dark brown, steady, the kind of eyes that looked right at you and did not slide away. We talked for 3 hours that afternoon, sitting on a quilt under an oak tree while everybody else played games and ate potato salad around us. By the time the sun went down, I knew I was going to marry that man. We were engaged 4 months later and married the following spring in a simple ceremony at my home church with about 60 people in the pews and my mama crying in the front row. Raymond worked as an electrician. He was good at it, the kind of man who took pride in doing a job right the first time. He used to say there is no such thing as halfway. Either the lights come on or they do not. That was Raymond all over. He was steady and sure, and he loved me in the most uncomplicated way a person can love another person. He did not make loving me hard. He just did it, every single day, without drama or condition. We built our life together one careful year at a time, and when Terrell came along in the 9th year of our marriage, we were ready for him. We had prayed for that child. We had waited and hoped and trusted, and then there he was, 7 pounds and 4 ounces of pure miracle. And Raymond cried in that hospital room in a way I had never seen a grown man cry before. Happy tears, the best kind. I worked for 32 years as a school librarian at Riverside Elementary School right here in Clarksville. 32 years of helping children find their first books, watching their little eyes go wide when a story grabbed them and would not let go. I can still see some of those children's faces even now, the ones who came in, reluctant and left holding a book against their chest, like it was something precious. That is the greatest gift I ever gave in that library. Not the books themselves, but the moment when a child realized that a book could be theirs, that a story could belong to them, that the worlds inside those pages were waiting just for them. I loved that job with everything I had. I retired 11 years ago, and I will be honest with you, it took me a solid 2 years to stop dreaming about that library. But my knees started giving me trouble, and the doctor said it was time to slow down, so I did. I handed my library keys to the next librarian, and I came home to my garden, my church choir, my sweet tabby cat named Biscuit, and my son. Raymond passed away 17 years ago from a massive heart attack. He was at work. He did not suffer long, the doctors told me, and I hold on to that. He was 60 years old and healthy, as far as we knew, and then one Tuesday morning in March, he was just gone. Terrell was 32 at the time, and he drove 4 hours to get to me the moment he got the call. He walked in my front door, and I fell into his arms, and we held each other up for a long time, standing right there in the hallway, Losing Raymond hollowed me out in a way that took years to fill back in. But I had Terrell. I had my faith. I had this house and my community and my work, and I kept going. The way women do, the way we always do. My son's name is Terrell Raymond Calloway. He is 49 years old, and he is the absolute love of my life. I raised that boy with Raymond by my side for his first 32 years, and then alone after that, and every single stage of his life has been a privilege to witness. He was a quiet boy, thoughtful and kind, the kind of child who brought home injured birds and tried to nurse them back to health in a shoebox. He was not the loudest kid in any room, but he was always the most decent. His teachers used to say that about him. Loretta, they would tell me at parent conferences. Terrell is the one the other children come to when they are upset. That made me proud in a way that has never faded. He grew into a man his daddy would have been so proud of. He works in facilities management for a hospital system here in Tennessee, has for over 20 years now. He is dependable and hardworking, and he has his father's honest eyes. He called me every single day when he first moved out at 24. Every single day without fail, even when he was busy with work, even when he was tired, he would call just to hear my voice. He said, "Mama, I just need to know you are doing okay." And that used to fill my heart so full I thought it might burst right through my chest. Then he met Crystal. Crystal Renee came into Terrell's life about 6 years ago. She was 38 at the time, never been married before, no children. She worked as an office manager for a dental practice on the other side of Clarksville. Terrell met her at a community fundraiser, and he was smitten from the beginning. I could hear it in his voice the first time he mentioned her name on the phone, a kind of lightness that I recognized and was glad for. He deserved someone. He had dated here and there over the years, but nothing had stuck. I had prayed many times for God to bring the right person to him. She had a way about her that I noticed right from the very first evening. Terrell brought her over for dinner. Now, I want to be fair. I was not the kind of mother-in-law who hated every woman her son looked at. I truly was not. I had prayed for years that Terrell would find someone who would love him the way he deserved to be loved. He is a good man, a gentleman, the kind of man who remembers your birthday and fixes your leaking faucet without being asked and means it when he asks how you are doing. He deserved a partner who would cherish that in him. I was prepared to love whoever he loved. I was prepared to open my arms and my table and my heart. But Crystal was something else entirely. And I say that not with bitterness, but with the plain truth that I have learned to speak at 7 years old, when you have run out of patience for softening things that do not deserve to be softened. She was polished on the surface, real pretty, kept her hair done and her nails perfect, always smiled when company was around. She knew how to present herself, I will give her that. First impressions, she was charming, bright, attentive. But I am a woman who spent 32 years watching children, really watching them, learning to see past the surface to what was underneath. And underneath, Crystal's pretty smile and careful manners was something cold and calculating that I felt in my bones from the first evening she sat at my table. The first evening she came to my house, she sat down at my dinner table, looked at the pot of collard greens I had cooked from scratch the way my mother taught me, the way her mother taught her, a recipe that has lived in my family for generations, and said, "Oh, I do not eat that kind of food." Just like that. "No, thank you, Miss Loretta. No, I appreciate you going to the trouble, but greens are not really for me." And none of that. Just a flat statement delivered like a verdict. Like my cooking was something to be ruled on and found lacking. Terrell looked embarrassed, and I just smiled and said, "Well, honey, there is plenty of other things on the table. Help yourself." Because I am a grown woman, and I know how to hold my composure. My mama taught me that a lady does not lose her grace no matter what is thrown at her. That lesson served me well many times in the years to come. But that was the beginning. Over the next few months, as Terrell and Crystal got more serious, I started to notice small things that added up over time. When I called Terrell, he would answer, but he always sounded distracted, like he was somewhere else, like he was choosing his words carefully instead of just talking to his mama. He used to talk to me freely, tell me everything about his day, his thoughts, his worries, his small victories at work. He would call me to describe a sunset he had seen from his car because he knew I would appreciate it. Now he spoke in short, careful sentences. He gave me information but not himself, if you understand what I mean. There is a difference between a man who tells you he is fine and a man who is fine, and I know my son well enough to tell the two apart. When I invited them to Sunday dinner, Crystal would find a reason why they could not come. She was tired, she had a headache. She had plans she had already made, plans that somehow always materialized exactly when my invitations went out. When they did come, they came late and left early. And Crystal would sit at my table with her eyes on her phone more than on the conversation, and I would catch Terrell giving me these apologetic looks across the table that broke my heart just a little each time. Not because he was not trying, but because I could see that he was working hard, managing her mood, managing the atmosphere, managing me all at the same time. And that is an exhausting thing to watch a gentleman do. She did not like me. That much was plain. But for a long while, I could not understand why. Because I had done nothing to her. I had welcomed her every time she came into my home. I complimented her, asked about her work, remembered the details she shared, and asked about them the next time I saw her. I sent her a birthday card with a heartfelt note inside. I bought her a small gift at Christmas, something personal that I had thought about, not just a gift card from the gas station. I asked Terrell what she liked, what her favorite things were, so I could know her better. I was trying. Lord knows I was trying with everything I had. She did not try back, and eventually I stopped pretending not to notice. They got married 2 years after they met, and I will be honest, the wedding was not what I had imagined for my son. It was a small civil ceremony, just a handful of friends, no family to speak of beyond what Crystal allowed. Crystal made it very clear through Terrell that she did not want it to be a big family affair, that she found large family gatherings stressful, that she wanted something simple and intimate. Terrell called me the week before and told me, real gentle like he always is, "Mama, I just need you to go along with what Crystal wants on this." Okay, it is her day too. And I said, yes, baby, of course, because he is my son and his happiness matters more to me than any party or any tradition or any vision I had ever held in my head of what his wedding might look like. I sat in the front row at that wedding in a pale blue dress I had bought, special for the occasion, with a smile on my face and joy in my heart for my son, even while Crystal barely looked at me the whole day. I hugged Terrell tight and told him I was so happy for him. I shook Crystal's hand and told her she was beautiful, and that I hoped we could build something real between us now that we were family. She smiled her surface smile and said of course and turned away. And I stood there knowing, in the deepest part of myself, that things were not going to get better. They were going to get worse. Things got worse after the wedding. It was like the ring on her finger gave Crystal some kind of permission to stop pretending, to stop maintaining even the thin performance of warmth she had offered before. The calls from Terrell dropped from daily to twice a week and then to once a week. And then sometimes I would not hear from him for 10 or 12 days at a stretch, and I would have to call him myself. When I did, he always sounded fine, always said everything was good, but there was something flat in his voice that was not there before, something worn down, something careful in a way that a man should never have to be careful. Talking to his own mother, I started hearing things from people in the community, people who knew Terrell from before, people who loved him. Not gossip exactly, I want to be clear about that. I am not a gossip, and I do not keep company with gossips. Just small observations from people who cared. A cousin of mine ran into Terrell at the grocery store on a Saturday morning and called me that evening to say he had seemed thin and worn out, that he had not seemed like himself. My neighbor, Miss Paulette, whose son has known Terrell since they were in middle school together, told me carefully one afternoon over tea on my porch that she had seen Crystal speaking to Terrell in a parking lot one afternoon in a way that had made her deeply uncomfortable to witness. She would not go into detail, she is a discreet woman, but she said the words sharp and dismissive, and I did not need more detail than that. People at my church started to ask about Terrell. "Where is your son these days, Loretta? He used to come with you sometimes on Easter and special Sundays." I would say, "Oh, he is busy. You know how it is when you are working and building a life." And I would smile and change the subject because I did not know what else to say. I did not know how to explain to my church family that I was watching my son disappear in slow motion, and I could not find the door to reach him through. I held all of this quietly. I did not want to make things worse for Terrell by inserting myself in a way that gave Crystal more ammunition against me, more evidence to present to him that I was difficult and controlling and interfering. I know mothers-in-law have a reputation for meddling, and I refused to give her that weapon to use. So I prayed instead. I prayed every morning and every night that God would protect my son and guide his home and open his eyes to see clearly what was around him. I prayed for Crystal too, though some nights that prayer was harder to form than others. I asked God to do whatever needed to be done to bring the truth to light, and I left the method in his hands. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon in late November, about 14 months ago now. Terrell had called me the day before, a Wednesday evening, and his voice had sounded a little more like himself than it had in a while. Light, almost. He said, "Mama, I am going to come over Thursday after work and take care of some things around the house for you. I know you have got a list." I did have a list. I always have a list when you live alone in a house that is over 40 years old. I had a loose gutter on the back end of the house that rattled, something terrible in the wind, and had been worrying me for weeks. I had a cabinet door in the kitchen that had come off its top hinge and was hanging at an angle that drove me absolutely crazy every time I looked at it. I had a light fixture in the hallway that had been flickering. Terrell used to come take care of things like that for me all the time. Just show up on a Saturday morning with his toolbox and spend a few hours making sure his mama's house was right. That had fallen away over the past couple of years along with everything else. So when he called and offered to come Thursday, I was glad. More than glad. I was grateful in that deep quiet way you feel grateful when something small and normal that you have been missing finally comes back to you. I cleaned up the house Thursday morning. Not that it was dirty, but I wanted it to feel welcoming. I went to the store and got the ingredients for a peach cobbler because it has been Terrell's favorite since he was about 7 years old, and I still make it the way my mama taught me, with fresh peaches when they are in season and canned when they are not, with brown sugar and cinnamon and a butter crust that gets golden and crisp on top. I made the cobbler in the afternoon so the house would smell like it when he arrived. I put on a fresh pot of coffee. I sat in my chair by the window and I waited for my son. What I did not know was that Crystal had followed him. Terrell arrived around 5:30 in the evening, came in through the front door the way he always had, called out, "Mama, I am here." And I met him in the hallway with a hug that I held a little longer than usual because I had missed him. He looked tired around the eyes, but he smiled when he smelled the cobbler and said, "You did not have to do all that," and I said yes. I most certainly did. We went to the kitchen and I poured the coffee and cut the cobbler, and we sat down at the table together, and we were talking, just talking, easy and warm the way we used to. And for about 20 beautiful minutes it felt like things were right again. It felt like my son was back. Then I heard the front door open. Now I always keep my front door unlocked during the day because this is the house I grew up coming to for safety, and I do not like the feeling of a locked door in the daytime. This is Clarksville, Tennessee. I have lived on this street for 41 years. I know everyone within 4 blocks. I have never once felt unsafe with my front door unlocked in the daylight hours. So when it opened, I was not alarmed at first. I thought maybe it was Miss Paulette or somebody from the church stopping by. But it was Crystal. She walked into my kitchen doorway, and I could see immediately from the set of her jaw and the flatness in her eyes that she was angry. Not just irritated or tired or having a bad day. Angry in that controlled, deliberate way of someone who has decided to be angry and has come somewhere specifically to show it. Terrell stood up from the table right away, the way a man stands up when he recognizes danger. And he said, "Crystal, hey, I told you I was coming over here. I texted you before I left work." She looked at him and said, "I know exactly where you are. That is not the point." Then she looked at me. I stood up too because I am not the kind of woman who stays seated when trouble is standing in her kitchen. I am 77 years old, and I have faced harder things than an angry woman in my doorway, and I was not about to shrink. I kept my voice calm and I said, "Crystal, you are welcome here any time. Come on in, would you like some cobbler?" I was trying to bring the temperature down. I was offering her a place at the table, literally and figuratively, the way I had been trying to do for years. I truly was trying. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as contempt, pure and unmasked contempt, the kind she had kept carefully hidden behind her surface smile for all the years prior, and she said, "I do not want anything from you." Then she started in on Terrell right there in my kitchen, like I was not even in the room. She told him that he was always running over here, always choosing his mama over his wife, that I was manipulating him and he was too blind to see it. that I had been pulling strings his whole life and he had never once cut free of me, that a grown man should not be spending his free evening fixing his mother's gutters when he had a wife at home who needed him. Her voice was low and controlled and vicious, the kind of voice that has practiced its cruelty until it sounds almost reasonable. Terrell tried to calm her down. He kept his own voice low and steady the way he does when he is trying not to escalate, the way I imagine he had learned to do over years of living with her. He said, "Crystal, that is not what is happening here. Mama needed some help around the house, and I wanted to come see her. That is all. There is nothing wrong with that." She talked over him like he had not spoken, and then she reached across my kitchen counter without any warning, without any escalation that I could have prepared for, and she picked up my ceramic coffee mug. It was sitting right there on the counter where I had set it down earlier. It was a big, heavy mug, cream-colored with a thick handle, the kind that holds heat well. It was still half full of coffee from that morning. I had not gotten around to washing it yet. I did not understand what she was doing. My brain did not process it fast enough. I am 77 years old, and the thought that a grown woman was about to throw a ceramic mug at my face in my own kitchen was not something that had ever entered my mind as a possibility before that moment. And before my mind could catch up to my eyes, she threw it. It hit me on the left side of my jaw and cheekbone. I heard the crack before I felt the pain, and then the pain came all at once, hot and sharp and radiating up through my left temple and into the orbit of my eye. The mug shattered when it hit me, pieces of it going to the floor. Coffee spraying across my kitchen cabinets and the floor and my blouse. I staggered backward and my hand caught the edge of the counter and I held on. I heard Terrell shout something, his voice cracking in a way I had never heard from him, and then everything was blurry around the edges for a moment. Not black, just blurry, like someone had smeared the room. I did not fall. I need you to hear that. I am 77 years old and I have seen things in this life that would bring a younger person to their knees, and I did not go down. I caught myself on that counter and I stood there with my right hand pressed hard against the left side of my face, and I made myself breathe in and out, slow and steady. My mama's voice in my head saying, "Stay on your feet, Loretta Jean. Stay on your feet." And then I looked at my son. The look on Terrell's face is something I will carry with me until the day I leave this earth. It was horror, pure and immediate. The horror of a man watching something happen that he cannot unhappen. It was anger, the kind that comes from deep in a man's chest when someone hurts his mother. But underneath both of those things, underneath the horror and the anger, was something else that I recognized, and that broke my heart wider than the impact of that mug had. It was shame. The shame of a man who has known on some level, maybe for a long time, that something is deeply wrong in his life and has found reasons not to see it clearly. The shame of a man who is finally being forced to see. Crystal did not apologize. She did not look horrified at what she had done. She did not rush to check on me or show any sign that she had surprised even herself. She looked at Terrell for a long moment with an expression I cannot fully interpret, and then she turned and walked back out my front door without a single word. We heard her car start. We heard her drive away, and the kitchen was quiet except for the sound of Biscuit the cat, who had come in from the other room and was sniffing at the shattered pieces of that mug on my floor. Terrell was at my side immediately. He moved fast for a big man, always has. His hands were on my face, gentle, tilting my head, looking at the place where the mug had hit, and his hands were shaking. I could feel them shaking. He kept saying, "Mama, Mama, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone? Should we go to the hospital?" I said, "Terrell, I am okay, baby. Just let me stand here for a minute." And he stood with me, his hand on my back, until the worst of the dizziness passed. Then he drove me to the urgent care clinic about 2 miles away. The doctor there was a young woman, could not have been more than 35, and she looked at my face with a careful, steady expression that told me she was used to seeing things like this, and that she took them seriously. She asked me what had happened, and I told her exactly what had happened. I did not soften it. I did not say I walked into a door or I fell. I said a ceramic mug was thrown at my face by my daughter-in-law. I said it clearly, and I watched her write it down. She examined the impact site thoroughly. She said there was no fracture, no orbital damage, no sign of concussion, which was a mercy, and I thanked God for it quietly. But she said the contusion was significant and that the bruising would develop over the next 24 to 48 hours and would likely be severe. She was exactly right. Within 24 hours, I had a bruise that, began at my left jaw and traveled up across my cheekbone and settled under my eye in a deep, ugly bloom of purple and green and yellow. I looked like I had been in a fight, which I suppose in a way I had been, though I had not thrown a single thing. That mark stayed on my face for 3.5 weeks. 3.5 weeks I had to go to church and to the grocery store and to my Wednesday choir practice and to my Thursday morning Bible study with a bruised face that no amount of concealer could fully cover. 3.5 weeks I had to answer questions from people who cared about me, friends and neighbors and church members who took one look at me and could not hide the concern in their eyes. And I told every single one of them the truth. I told them exactly what had happened, exactly who had done it, and exactly where it had happened. I did not dramatize it, and I did not minimize it. I just told the truth, plainly and clearly, because that is what I have always done. And at 77 years old, I was not about to stop. The looks on people's faces when I told them, Lord. Some of them got angry on my behalf, the fiery kind of angry that wants to take action. Some of them got quiet and sad. Miss Paulette, when I told her, took my hands in hers and did not say anything for a long moment. And then she said, Loretta, I am so sorry I did not say more when I had the chance. She was talking about what she had witnessed in that parking lot, I knew. I told her it was not her fault. It never is with these things. People do what they know to do and hope it is enough. And here is where the story takes a turn that maybe you did not expect. Terrell did not go home that night. He did not call Crystal. He did not try to smooth things over or go back to their house to work through it. He stayed with me. He helped me clean up the kitchen, sweeping up every piece of that shattered mug, wiping the coffee off my cabinets, mopping the floor. He fed Biscuit and made sure I had taken the pain reliever the doctor had recommended. He slept in his old bedroom that night, the room where I had tucked him in and kissed his forehead for so many years, the room that still had the same dresser he had as a teenager. In the morning, when I came downstairs, he was already up. He had made eggs the way I like them, soft scrambled with a little cheese, and there was fresh coffee and toast. We sat at that kitchen table, the same table where everything had happened less than 18 hours before, and we talked, really talked, not managed, careful surface talk, real talk, the kind we used to do, the kind I had been missing for years. We talked for 4 hours straight until nearly noon, and I let him say everything he needed to say without interrupting, without reacting, just listening the way I used to listen to the children in my library when they were trying to tell me something important. He told me things that broke my heart into pieces and also helped me understand things I had been trying to understand for years. He told me that Crystal had been controlling from very early in their relationship, before they were even engaged, that she had monitored his phone, gone through his messages, questioned him about where he was and who he was with, that she had a gift for making him feel guilty for things that were not wrong, for making ordinary human behavior feel like a betrayal. He told me she had told him, repeatedly and consistently over the years, that I did not like her, that I had spoken badly about her to people in town, that I was jealous of his relationship with her and was trying to come between them. None of it was true, not a word of it. But she had been patient and systematic about it, and over time the accumulation had worked. He had started to see me through her lens without even fully realizing that was what he was doing. He told me he had been unhappy for a long time. He told me he had been afraid, not of physical harm, though after what she had done to me, that fear was now sitting in the room with us, but afraid in the way that people become afraid when they have been slowly convinced that they cannot trust their own judgment, that everything they feel and think and want is suspect, that the person they are outside of their marriage is somehow wrong or insufficient. That kind of fear is quiet and it lives deep, and it is very hard to name when you are in the middle of it. I held his hand across that table and I told him what I tell every person I love. I told him the truth is always going to be enough. I told him I was right here and had never been anywhere else. I told him I had never stopped being in his corner, not for one single day, no matter how long it had been since I heard his voice. And then I told him that what had happened in my kitchen the night before was not something I was willing to pretend had not happened, that the truth had a way of needing to be faced, and that I would support him through whatever he decided to do next, but that I needed him to do something. I needed him not to go back to that house and act like nothing had occurred. That afternoon, Terrell called a lawyer It took time, as these things always do. He was careful and methodical about it, the way his father would have been, the way I had tried to raise him to be. He filed for divorce 3 weeks after that Thursday in November, and Crystal fought it with everything she had. She contested the grounds. She tried to reframe the narrative, to paint Terrell as emotionally unstable and me as a manipulative and interfering mother who had engineered some kind of scheme to break up her marriage. She denied ever throwing the mug. She said she had no memory of any such incident, that Terrell's account of events was colored by his loyalty to his mother and his desire for a way out of the marriage. But here is something Crystal did not know, something she could not have accounted for when she walked into my kitchen that evening and let her temper off its leash. My neighbor directly across the street, old Mr. Dempsey, is 82 years old and retired. He lost his wife 3 years ago, and he has developed a habit that widowed people often develop of sitting by his front window in the late afternoons, watching the neighborhood, having his tea. His house faces mine directly, a straight line across my front yard to his front window. He had seen Crystal's car pull up fast and hard behind Terrell's truck that evening. He had seen her get out of the car and go inside my house without knocking. And about 15 minutes later, he had heard, through his cracked window, the sound of breaking ceramic and a man's voice raised in distress. He had almost called the police that evening and decided against it, not knowing what was happening, not wanting to cause trouble. But he remembered it. He remembered all of it clearly, and I had kept every single piece of that shattered mug in a paper bag in my pantry. I am a librarian. Librarians document things. We preserve evidence. We understand that what is lost cannot always be recovered, but that what is saved can always be used. I had also taken photographs of my face every single day for the first 2 weeks, time-stamped automatically on my phone, showing the development and gradual fading of that bruise in clear documentary detail. I had the urgent care records with the doctor's notes, describing a significant contusion consistent with blunt force trauma to the left facial region, and noting the patient's account of how the injury had been sustained. I had 7 people from my church congregation who had seen my face within 48 hours of the incident and heard my account directly from me at that time. Crystal's denial did not get very far in the light of all that evidence. The divorce proceedings took 7 months in total. It was not a pleasant process, and I will not pretend otherwise. There were things said in legal documents about me that were painful to read, accusations and characterizations designed to make me look like the villain of a story. I had been a minor character in at best, but I held steady. I told my truth every time I was asked to tell it. I kept my composure. And in the end, the truth, as it always does when you give it the proper space and time and documentation, prevailed. The divorce was finalized 7 months ago. Terrell moved into an apartment about 4 miles from my house on the other side of Clarksville. It is a nice apartment, 2nd floor, good natural light, and he has been slowly making it feel like his. I helped him pick out some things for the kitchen. We went to the thrift store together on a Saturday and spent 3 hours going through the shelves the way we used to do when he was young and we could not afford to buy things new. He found a set of cast iron skillets, and I found a lamp I liked, and we had lunch at a little diner nearby afterward, and sat across from each other in a vinyl booth and talked and laughed. And it was so ordinary and so good that I had to excuse myself to the restroom for a few minutes so I could cry. Happy tears in private. He calls me every day now again. Every single day, sometimes twice. He comes for Sunday dinner every week without fail, and he stays for hours, the way he used to when he was young and had nowhere better to be, which I mean as the highest possible compliment. Last month he came over on a Saturday with his toolbox and fixed every single thing on my list: the gutter and the cabinet and the flickering hallway light and 3 other things I had added in the meantime. We sat on the back porch afterward and watched the sun go down over my garden the way we used to do when he was a teenager, and Raymond was still alive and everything felt possible. And I thought to myself, sitting in that evening light with my son beside me, that this right here was worth every hard thing I had ever gone through to get to it. My face healed, the mark faded. But I will tell you this, and I want you to hear me clearly. I did not want revenge. I want to be very plain about that, because I know revenge is what some of you might expect from a story like this, and I understand why. But I am a woman of faith. who has lived 77 years on this earth, and I have learned the hard way that revenge corrodes the vessel that holds it. It eats you from the inside out. It keeps you tied to the thing you most want to be free of. Revenge was never what I was after. What I wanted was the truth to come out, and it did. What I wanted was my son to be safe and free and able to see himself clearly again. And he is getting there, slowly. The way real healing always goes. One day and one honest conversation at a time. What I wanted was to still be standing in this house, on the other side of whatever Crystal Renee had planned for me. And I am standing. I am right here. Biscuit is on my lap. My cobbler recipe is still in my mama's handwriting on a card in my kitchen drawer. My garden came back this spring better than it has in years. Now, do I think about Crystal? Yes, I do sometimes in the quiet hours. I think about what makes a person become the way she was. I think about what must have happened to her. What wounds must live underneath that controlled and calculating surface to make someone capable of throwing a ceramic mug at an old woman's face and walking out without a word of regret. I do not know her story. I only know my own and my son's, but I have lived long enough to understand that people who hurt others the way she hurt Terrell, quietly and systematically over years, and who hurt me the way she hurt me in that kitchen, are people who are carrying something very heavy and very broken inside themselves. I do not hate her for that. I made a decision a long time ago not to let hate take up residence in this house. It is not welcome here. But I do not wish her back in my son's life either, and I do not apologize for that. Some doors are right to close, and that one was long overdue. I want to tell you something that I think about a lot in these quieter years of my life, something I want you to carry with you after you finish listening to this story. Mothers, we see our children differently than the rest of the world does. We knew them before they knew themselves. We were there for the very first breath, the very first step, the first day of school when they turned around at the door with that look on their face that said, "Please do not leave me." We were there for every fall and every heartbreak and every moment of doubt and every triumph. We carry a picture of our children that the rest of the world does not have access to, a true picture, the fullest version of who they really are. And when someone comes into our child's life and starts to dim the light, we know they carry, we feel it. We feel it in a way that is almost physical. A kind of grief for something that has not fully gone yet, but is going. Something being covered over and made smaller day by day. I could not reach Terrell directly during those years because Crystal had been patient and methodical about building a wall between us, brick by careful brick, over enough time that he could not see it from where he was standing inside it. I could see it from outside, but I could not dismantle it from outside either. I could only stay. Stay present, stay honest, stay open, keep my door unlocked in every sense of that word, and trust that the truth has a kind of gravity that eventually pulls things back where they belong. A ceramic mug thrown in anger on a November evening proved to be exactly the kind of undeniable, physical, visible truth that stripped away every carefully constructed wall and left only reality, standing in my kitchen. I did not ask for that. I certainly did not want a bruise on my face for 3.5 weeks. But I will tell you that there are moments in a life when the thing that hurts you most is also the thing that finally sets everything right. And if I had to take that mug to the face to get my son back, I would take it again without a moment's hesitation. That is what a mother's love looks like when it has been tested long enough. It does not flinch. It does not fold. It stands there with its hand pressed to its face and its feet on the floor, and it waits for the truth to do what truth always does. My advice to any mother going through something similar, and I know without a doubt that some of you watching this right now are living some version of this story, is this. Stay steady. Do not match ugliness with ugliness, because you will only give the other person ammunition and you will compromise the person you know yourself to be. Document everything. Write things down. Keep records. Save photographs. Name dates and times and witnesses. Tell the truth to people you trust. Your pastor, your closest friend, your doctor, anyone who can serve as a witness to your account while the events are still fresh. Pray if prayer is your way, and even if it is not, find something to anchor you, some practice or community or piece of ground where you can go and remember who you are when the situation around you is trying to make you forget. And trust that your child's real heart is still in there even when it seems like a stranger is living in their body. The people who love us right do not disappear. They get buried sometimes, under fear and confusion and other people's versions of reality. But they are still there, and love that is patient and steady and absolutely unwilling to stop telling the truth will reach them eventually. I am 77 years old. I have buried a husband I loved with everything I had. I raised a son alone through the years after that, through the grief and the financial strain and the loneliness of it, and I raised him well. I worked 32 years shaping young minds in that library, and I am proud of every one of those years. I watched my son be slowly taken from me by a woman who understood that the way to control a good man is to isolate him from the people who know him best, and I survived a ceramic mug thrown at my face in my own kitchen by a woman who thought that would be enough to make me go away. It was not enough. I am still here. I will always be right here. I am still in my house on the edge of Clarksville, Tennessee. Biscuit the cat is sitting on my lap right now, warm and heavy and purring, completely unconcerned with all the drama of the past 14 months. My garden is coming along beautifully this year. My choir rehearsal is every Wednesday evening at 6, and I have not missed one. My son called me this morning at 8:15 just to say good morning, Mama. I love you. And I said I love you too, baby. I will see you Sunday. That is the whole story. Every single word of it true. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me where you are from. Drop your city down in the comments section below. I read every single comment, everyone, and I love hearing from you all across this country and beyond. And if you love your grandma, if you have a mother or a grandmother in your life who has stood steady for you through things that should have broken her, who has kept her door open and her heart open and her feet on the floor through more than you will probably ever fully know, please give this video a like. It means more than you might think. Subscribe so you do not miss the next story, because I have been on this earth for 77 years and I have more stories to tell than I have time left to tell them. And I plan to use every minute I have got. Share this with your friends and your family and anybody you think might need to hear today that the truth has a way of coming out in the end, that patient love outlasts calculated cruelty, and that a 77-year-old grandmother from Clarksville, Tennessee is still standing. God bless every last one of you. Take care of the old women in your life. We have been through more than you know, and we love you more than you will ever fully understand.